lovely.
You're feeling quite good?
Oh, lovely.
So which has been like your highlight of the discussions that we had since morning?
I think today just realizing that there is need for each and every woman within their age groups to have interventions. Yes, so we cannot have a one-size-fits-all.
For sure.
Yes.
For sure. We can't have a one-size-fits-all.
That for me is one of the biggest, because data tells us things are taking shape in different ways and they're affecting us all in different ways. So I think for me, that's one of the biggest take-home points. That's one of the areas of intervention that we need to explore. Because you cannot serve, like I have 5 children. My eldest is 29. The way she responds to violence and the way I respond are very different. I am in politics as well as in finance. So the way I experience it and respond are also very different. So every woman is unique, but it is very interesting that collectively it all becomes a global TFGBV effect.
For sure.
So how do we then have interventions that ensure that each and every person in their space can thrive? Because how do we have the law address the specific and particular needs of women? Because we have seen the judicial system all over the world is not very friendly when it's a woman reporting, because it's always said that women like crying wolf. I do not know why everybody thinks women cry wolf, even in Kenya. I am in politics, there are things I've been told, but when I report, it is said, Nerea, you are exaggerating. So that for me is very unique, but it is annoying. So I think if we all can get annoyed enough and realize what is that particular intervention that we can have that gets this collective anger against violence, because this violence will translate into how we are able to empower our girls to then have the shock absorbers for violence. Because it's very clear that eliminating the violence may not happen now because it's continuous. There are new forms of it. 15 years ago, I never used to worry about technology and violence. Right now, it's one of my biggest threats. It is affecting my daughters. It will affect my grandkids. So how then am I able to have the tools? So for me, one of the biggest take-homes is looking at the data. What kind of programs, interventions do we need to have? And then most importantly, how do we get government, who is the duty bearer? Because I know government is very responsible. And so government needs to be responsive. So how do we build systems and structures within government that can be able to respond to violence effectively and efficiently? So what programs do we have out there that are not currently anchored in government, that need to be anchored in government? So I think that's the biggest take-home.
That's the biggest take-home. You've mentioned that 15 years ago, you never really had to worry about the technological and also the digital space. But today, literally, based on the report and from what we've had in the first bit of the program, it's of importance that we also create awareness about the technology environment when it comes to issues and matters of GBV. So I'm going to take this one to Mwende Macharia, the queen of the airwaves. And I'm going to ask you, so what role does media play in raising awareness about TFGBV against women with influence, and how can coverage be improved to, just create and also spark meaningful action?
Thank you, Israel. I remember when I spoke earlier and I was talking about when I started that particular sleep early in the morning, I was like, am I a perpetrator or am I a victim? Then I realized I lie in both ends. Because on one side, I'm a journalist. So I have the responsibility of disseminating information, through print, through radio, of course. And then I feel sometimes I've been in rooms whereby if I didn't do it, somebody else did it, like somebody else violated somebody. Maybe it's a guest who's on an interview, and they spoke in a way that I thought, this person is being wronged, this person is being demeaned. And so from time to time I've asked myself, because we are trained journalists, we've gone to school, we are in this business, and some of the things, for example, the tech things that we're talking about, I remember when I was in college, we were calling them the new media. Now they found us in practice. then what do we do in order for us to avoid being the perpetrators, even as even as we are the media? So I feel like we need to do a bit more training. Yes, with the necessary, necessary bodies. Like I am so sure here today, I think there was a lady here. There are many, many bodies that have come today that have train, especially on law. For example, the things that have, the things that have emerged recently, especially on the law issues, on like my friend here. Please tell me your organization again, so because I feel like you need to be on my show one of these days.
Internet.
Oh, what do you do?
I'm a digital rights advocate and a legal fellow.
Exactly. So I feel like sometimes as not even sometimes, I feel like we need to have more trainings through AMWIK, through other bodies that I've had here, and really like train us as broadcasters. Oh my God. I've been in press conference, like the ones on YouTube, and where they invite celebrities and you stand there and you hear some of the questions that are being asked to personalities, and I cringe because I'm like, you are violating that particular person. Then, let's just create more publicity on the trainings that I'm talking about, and then let's have more people in our media houses. If it's on the television, if it's on radio shows, like I do a showbiz show. So mostly it's Udaku. Udaku, I need to explain to my friend what Udaku means. No, it's mostly gossip and banter and such like things. And sometimes if you're not so careful, it can end up in what we're talking about right now. Violating people. It can be those things that we were talking about earlier. So I feel like more trainings, having law experts come into our studios, especially if it's on print. Let's have these, like for example, what I was saying earlier, let's have this report tomorrow on the newspapers. Let's have this conversation going on through, even on Twitter. Let it trend today. Yes, and of course there are those who will do a mockery about it, but it's through that conversations, in media we say there's never bad publicity. Yes. It's out there, it's a conversation, it's happening. Yeah. So the trainings, having the experts in our studios, having ourselves as broadcasters and media practitioners relearning the things that we did in media law. Yes. I know we did media law, but right now things have changed and we need refresher courses. I feel like that's what should be happening in media houses.
You've talked about an importance of us doing and creating awareness and also having spaces to teach and educate the new students who are coming and also generally the public. So I'm going to take this one to the lecturer, Daktari, all the way from Strathmore, but then I'm going to kind of like take a specific deep dive into the local challenges when it comes to tech. And also in the Kenyan context, so what do you think are some of the specific technological factors contributing to the prevalence of TFGB against women with influence?
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Do I even have to use my mic?
Yes.
Just use.
Okay, or I can use because
Yes.
I can't hear.
Lecturers and pastors, they have big voices. So
GBV happening on stage. I'm kidding. So when it comes to local innovations, or even like we could just talk about what are we actually doing when it comes to TFGBV here in Kenya? We are doing much, but we've not reached there yet. Yeah? And one of the things that I'm so sure that we are looking at right now, we're looking at something known as AI. And I am so sure everyone in the room understands AI. Do they understand it? If there's a farmer here, we're not talking about artificial insemination. We're talking about artificial intelligence. Okay? We have an issue with what AI is actually doing right now. And one of the things is that even if they just like bring in new innovations in a way that it can actually be able to impact the different people, and trust me, people really believe that AI can only be used with people who actually have smartphones only. Even people with basic phones, feature phones, they can still be able to actually use AI. And here we actually now call it, they're actually going to use something known as SMS chatbot. So we use chatbot as for smartphones. But now there's an SMS chatbot where you can actually be able to just communicate, just ask you through an SMS and what you like the answer. But the back end is purely AI driven, okay? So the question is, how many of these particular people, digital literacy to talk about one day, how many of these people actually know that can actually work for them? But even without that, question is, how have we even taught to the people in the underprivileged spaces? Because they're actually even underprivileged spaces. So most of the time, I saw the statistics showing Facebook is one, I think maybe that was the answer, maybe for the dogs. Facebook is mostly old people like us are the ones on Facebook. Interesting, Instagram has very few, which is really, really interesting. We actually expect there to be a lot of maybe TFGBV happening, but it's neither here, neither there. But now for this particular case, and I thought, what's my thought? That's the reason I never like debating what I'm actually saying. But anyway, so talk about the low, we'll talk about people in low privilege spaces. They go through still also TFGBV. It's only that they do not know it is that. We are very cognizant about it in urban settings. I was actually in a space where there was another media personality. She was actually told, come and, it was actually a TFGBV thing. It was actually a release of, I think, one of the UN bodies. And she was telling me, Jerry, I was told to MC this thing, and I was told that one of the things I need to do is publicize this on Twitter. And I'm like, I left Twitter 8 years ago. Reason? She was a trending topic for 7 days. Body shaming. Yeah? So when you look at this particular space, we understand body shaming in urban setting. Is there a woman in a rural setting who's actually body shaming and she has no idea about it? And now imagine if someone actually now, you go into a particular space and then when you walk in, definitely all these guys have even categories who become easy feature phones or patrons. So they've actually heard about you. So when you actually walk in, it's like, she's the one walking in. That is still, because we actually think that smartphones also they are the only ones that are actually propagating, but also feature phones are still being able to propagate this particular space. So what are we doing? AI is a big animal in the room. There's a lot of issues with AI. How are these models trained? They're not trained with our data. It is not contextualized.
For sure.
Yeah. So we have seen that a lot of people actually now bringing in. So we have AI-powered platforms, and I'm so sure some of these platforms maybe actually even adopted them here in Kenya. The question is, what kind of data are they running on? Because even if you actually say there's something known as layer freezing, we actually say let's layer freeze this bottom bit, actually now bring our own data. But remember, the training data is still biased. Yeah. So there's a lot of it, and that's the reason why AI is always being spoken about. So the thing is that, are we collecting data enough? There's someone from GEC, there's a time that we had a discussion with them, and they actually said that they have a lot of data, but they do not have the money yet to, or the funding to actually bring it together. That brings the issue of how can you actually now bring all this data together that even judiciary can actually be able to like use. Okay? So once we collect the right data, what is common? What are the issues that not only women but also men in Kenya are actually facing? Then now let's have this particular data now training our own models. Let's contextualize our AI-powered systems. And that way, at least now we can actually say judiciary is not going to be, it's easy to actually use, even if you're just going to integrate ChatGPT, it's easy for a judiciary person to now come and see, because it's actually using our own data, we're actually able to do that.
For sure.
Just get without going to Google. Just get that and it's easy.
You've given a very important point with regards to bias, especially when it comes to data training of these AI models. And in the morning, a colleague from UNESCO, Ito, just mentioned an interesting statistic, and she said that 73% of women journalists are attacked online, and 20% of those journalists are actually attacked outside of the virtual world, in the real life. And these are just some of those statistics that we have been able to account for, and majority of them are global. Now, looking at this from a regional perspective, I'd just like to ask, so regionally, what initiatives has UNESCO implemented in Africa to promote safer digital spaces for women, and what impacts have they had so far?
Okay, thank you. And so basically, UNESCO has been working to protect women journalists, so women as a women of influence, because together with women politicians, they have been the target of online harassment and abuse so far. And basically so as a basis, as a baseline, we promote gender equality in and through the media, because as my colleague, journalists, has mentioned, media has, shaped the perception, right? Media shape the culture, so the way media communicate about women plays an important role. So we basically do this baseline of promoting gender equality, not only in the content, but also to access, to carry opportunities within the media houses. We also work to empower women journalists to protect themselves, on digital safety, etc. We conduct research. I mentioned two of them. There is one research that we publish on the AI, the tech-facilitated gender-based violence in the era of generative AI. But that's really not enough, in the sense that what we find out that, whenever there is an attack against women of influence, basically it's up to the victims to find, to mitigate, to find a solution, to report. That not only victims, but they have to, to find a way for, self-care, etc. So I think what is really important, and this was mentioned by our first speaker, about working with the duty barriers, because there are duty barriers in these countries and everywhere in the world, like judges, police, governments. These are the people who are responsible to ensure the safety of, women, safety of women journalists, women politicians. And at our level, we have been supporting, for example, media houses to have a policy against, sexual harassment, a more inclusive policy for career developments. Now we are working with the digital platforms to ensure, a more inclusive approach to design, tech design, design governance, but also in terms of content moderations, how to make sure that the content moderation protect the right of, men and women to be on the safe space. So these are some of the action that UNESCO has been supporting in the regions.
Sure. So you've mentioned a lot also to do with policy development and also the legal framework. So just to bring it and also to create a Kenyan, or rather a local perspective, and also just to bring it into the local context. I think when we were having the discourse in the first bit of the program, I think it was Dr. Ruth Owino from USIU who actually asked the question of, are there, or rather we need to actually investigate what legal lacunas or loopholes that we have that actually allow for victimization of women. So maybe just to present it and also to ask Valerie all the way from Kictonet, so how effective is Kenya's current legal framework in terms of addressing TGBV, particularly for women with influence, and what are the significant gaps that need to be filled?
Hello, can you hear me? I would like to start off by saying that I do not want to respond to this in a way that seems that the law does not do anything. I cannot, break the cup that feeds me, which is the legal profession. However, let me start by saying what works and then what is not working. So currently there is the Computer Misuse and Cybercrime and Misuse Act of 2018 that was a very, very progressive approach in the legal landscape of Kenya in terms of addressing cyber-related crimes. And so as I was doing my research, I said I have to say this, that first of all, it is crime. Like, according to the law, it is crime. And then second of all is that it is gender-based violence. And so the technology aspect is the tool that allows the gender-based violence to happen. And so the Cybercrime Act establishes a number of offenses that would fall under tech-facilitated gender-based violence. And the reason I say would fall is because it does not expressly state that this is tech-facilitated gender-based violence. But when you rely on resources and tools that have been put in place by, global organizations such as the UNFPA, it then is tech-facilitated gender-based violence. So there are issues such as cyber harassment, there is cyberbullying, and unauthorized access. So those aspects fall under tech-facilitated gender-based violence. So for example, when a woman politician posts something on Twitter, and then people start putting insulting comments under that Twitter post, that is cyberbullying, but then it also is tech-facilitated gender-based violence by virtue of the fact that, let's say, if it's around body shaming, then there's the gender aspect of it. There is also, of course, the Constitution of Kenya that talks about the right to equality and the right to men and women being treated equally. We have the Sexual Offences Act, which still does not have any tech-related sexual offense. So in the sense that it just talks about rape, it talks about defilement and all that, but there is no express provision. There is the Data Protection Act of 2019. It talks about various data protection responsibilities and offenses, and some of them is, sharing of information without the person's, what you call the data subject, the owner of that data, giving consent to that. So there was this thing during the Maandamano, the finance bill protests, where netizens were sharing the MPs' phone numbers on Twitter. And what we forget is that the law works both ways. The law protects us, it also protects this person. And so that is called doxing. And in the Data Protection Act, you could say it is sharing of one's personal data without their consent, but then there is no express provision in the Data Protection Act that talks about doxing, which is a new form of tech-facilitated gender-based violence that specifically talks about making it an offense to share one's personal data, such as phone number or email, online without their consent. Also, I wanted to talk about the issue of definitions, because when it comes to law, definition is what determines to what extent this becomes an offense. Yeah. Because if there are vague definitions, then a lot gets lost around, and a lot, goes as legal, and yet it is illegal. So, for example, there is online gender-based violence, and then there is tech-facilitated gender-based violence. So, like my able panelist from Strathmore said, that even Katululu can, perpetrate TFGBV, because technology is not just a smartphone. Even USSD, which is in a Katululu, is a technology. If someone uses their GPS to track you, which is stalking, which is a form of gender-based violence, then that is TFGBV. So TFGBV is not just on the online platform or smartphones and social media, but any form of technology, and not just a phone, but any form of technology, because nowadays a lot of the devices we use, the smart watches and everything, has a lot of our data. So someone can use that to track you, and they could use that to harm you or something. And so we need to also have that aspect. So going back to the legal framework, I would say more needs to be done in terms of, technology is advancing, and just like Professor said about AI, so the law needs to catch up with that, because new forms of tech-facilitated gender-based violence are happening, like cyber flashing, when someone shares pornographic content of their sexual partner online. Is there a law that specifically talks about that? Yeah. So the law needs to catch up with technology, because as technology is advancing, then are new offenses as well. And so there is also need to interconnect these laws, because there is the cybercrime, the Computer Cybercrime Act, but then there's also the Penal Code, which prosecutes all criminal cases. And then there's the aspect of defamation that happens online, especially for people who are prominent people, especially like content creators, politicians, all that. So there's need to interconnect these laws and also clearly define roles. Then there's the last aspect of the question you asked as to what can be done.
Yes. So I just basically wanted to know about the significant gaps, and also are there significant gaps that need to be filled that we have?
Yeah, thank you. So there's the aspect of law enforcement. It's okay. There's the aspect of law enforcement, and the law is just a law. Thank you. Sorry. The law is just the law unless it's enforced. And we as Kenyans really are so good with coming up with very good laws, and we are always setting the pace, even in the African continent. But then the question is, going back again to what was said about the law enforcement, the duty bearers, do they know about doxing? Do they know about cyberbullying, right? So there is need to empower law enforcement officers, judicial officers, this includes the judges, but let me just start all the way in the gender desk in the police when someone is reporting this matter. Well, for now, any cyber-related cases, you have to file an online petition in the National Cybercrime Committee, something like NC4. And so we had a roundtable, Italy had a roundtable dialogue with people from the NC4, and what came out from that discussion was that there is capacity gaps, you know, in terms of how they can even understand these cyber-related cases.
Yeah.
There is the technology aspect of these crimes that needs to be well understood. For someone to come and say that they are bullied online, and you can actually understand what it means. And then there's also the aspect of, for example, when you're making the law, you're reporting that matter on the NC4 website, which is different from reporting a normal criminal matter to the police and then to court like that. There's a place where they say that it's your own responsibility as the victim to actually get your own digital forensic investigator to investigate that matter, then come to them. And so is that a burden that should be borne by a victim? Why is it that if it's any other criminal matter, the prosecution takes it up? But here they are removing themselves from that situation because they understand the capacity gaps around forensics. So we need digital forensic labs. We need the tech to come together with the lawyers. We need to do more trainings around these people to ensure that they're better equipped to handle these matters.
For sure.
What happens is that the same thing when it comes to the algorithm Bureau of Aid is collecting all the likes. You want your picture to be liked. And now to make matters worse, example like Mwende here, how many followers do you have? And loads. Yeah? So what happens if there's anything that maybe needs to actually pull Mwende down? Already, by just her followers only, she's been tagged. Yeah? So what is this algorithm doing? So if the algorithm there know that this is bad publicity, just continue there. So who is trending? Just go to Twitter. Right now, you can see the person who's trending, there's a very high possibility it's on a negative note. Yeah? But the algorithm is actually putting you high. Yeah? So algorithms will always feed on data. Okay? And I like what I think the Secretary actually said over there, as in like, what kind of data are you putting out there? As a media personality, there's a lot that you're talking about. Unfortunately, people go out and fetch data about you and bring it to. Yeah, unfortunately, the doxing bit of it is actually real. Okay? So algorithms, unfortunately, feed on data. So there is no good or bad publicity when it comes to an algorithm. Okay? And now that's where the issue actually lies. So is it engagement? Is it ethics? So until we need to actually like now start looking at algorithm ethics, and it can actually work. The aspect is what are we feeding our algorithms with? Okay? So what are we feeding our algorithms with? And that one of the things actually asked when I actually just came here is we have a software developer in the room. Because we actually need everyone, people who are developing these particular platforms, to be also in this particular room. So now we're actually talking about all these stories actually hearing. There's an empathy bit. Because developers, they actually develop from a blueprint.
Yeah.
But if you do not involve them in the whole of this particular process, they'll actually not know about empathy. And now that becomes an issue. Yeah.
You talked about the importance of also having developers in this conversation, and at the first bit you also told us you involving developers as you're answering the question. You talked about the problem with some of the hindrances that are there towards training these models, and you talked about resources. So maybe just to come to you, Nerea. Sorry, I have a niece called Nerea. So probably just come to you, Nerea, with regards to resource mobilization. How can international development agencies prioritize funding and resources to address TFGBV, and also what innovative financial models can support this effort?
I mean, I think I'm lucky that I've done grants management in that international development space for a while. And donors tend to come with a prescribed program intervention. So one thing that they need to do is utilize the local context and pick data, for example, what we have today, pick that data and develop programs and fund that program wholesome. When I say that, because this is a matter of gender-based violence, you have to fund, research, and then you move from research and fund the implementation of it, from identifying victims, ensuring there's reporting, up to the legal process and follow up and follow through to conclusion, so that then you can be able to arrest the issue. You can put that matter to rest. If you don't have consequences, and if donors do not fund up to and including the consequences of TFGBV, then we are not going to make a difference. And so that essentially means that we cannot fund the softer aspects, and most donors tend to fund the softer aspects. You want to come to this meeting to discuss it, yes, we will fund. You want to have victims reporting, yes, we will have a hotline. Thank you very much. But what does it take for somebody to actually follow up, go to court, get a lawyer? It is very expensive. I've done interventions for gender-based violence at community rural level. It is so expensive. Most times people drop out before they even get to conclusion. So in as far as developing the models, we need to have a model, therefore, that involves and includes a sustainability approach with government, the duty bearer. So if you want to fund it, you make sure it's anchored from the program design stage. So it's a co-creation, and I've done a lot of donors are moving towards co-creation. So we cannot have, processes that are thought of, in Washington or in whichever city the donor is based, and we come and simply, thank you very much. Here is the program note. Here is the concept. Take it, implement it. So you must have everybody designing, and then everybody has to be willing to acknowledge what it takes to deliver that program.
Sure.
Because most times we do not, make it a priority to identify the real cost.
Sure.
The economic cost of funding these programs is a significant issue. So when we are discussing program development, we do not want to have the technical people. We don't want to have only the doctors at the table.
Yeah.
You need to have health economists. You need to have Nerea, who is a CPA. You need to have somebody else who understands community participation and engagement, so that we can actually tell this is what it will cost. So the model has to be well thought out. It has to take the format of a value chain. So if we don't take that approach, we are not going to be able to do it.
So, Mwenda, just before I get to you, Sijali, mumunya tu mdomo kidogo, I'm coming to you. So, Ito, let me take this one to you. Now, from a regional perspective and also from a global perspective, how is the donor landscape looking like, especially when it comes to funding and financing of TFGBV activities?
Well, I can share my own perception, because I'm not a specialist of international financing. But from what I have observed, that the issue of tech facilitate gender-based violence is a global one. It's not specific to Kenya. It's not specific to Africa. There is a global awareness. So one of the, I think, as Nerea mentions, it is true that the trend, even the UN agencies, we are very active in mobilizing funding for the causes that we are defending, like gender equality, for example. And the more and more, the trend is really in the co-development of the programs. And I think, one of the powerful tools that I have seen is, for example, this report, right? Which, if it can be shared widely, not only in Kenya, through the channel. For example, UNESCO is also publishing every 4 years a global law trend report on freedom of expression and media developments. One of the chapters that we will issue next year is on the impact of AI in journalism. And definitively we can, use some of the data of that Kenyan report to highlight. So I think that yes, that's a positive, positive outlook for advocating on that topic. But again, I think associating the donors in this kind of event, inviting, their representation, the embassies. I think it helps to raise, the profile of the awareness and the need to finance this field.
I think when it comes
But when one of the big shows, when they should give a rest to his politician there. I hope she's not hearing me, but I'm saying this. Let's just give these conversations like the airtime that they deserve. Because if I'm saying I'm not on Facebook, and these are spaces that get me money, and I'm not on Facebook, Instagram, because for me, I get money through these spaces. That means there might be clients in there who want to reach me, but then they can't find me. But you see, I have to protect myself. Sure. Yes, when I am on TikTok, where I'm saying I never check out any of my comments. I'm so sure there are also good comments there, where people are telling me one day, we can see you, we can see what you're doing. But I am scared to be, looking at those comments. I do not want to see people telling me bad things. Yeah. So I feel like let's have the conversations on the primetime shows. Let's have them on the newspapers, the front pages, which I know when we send the press releases later on in the day, then we can have this conversation and even have this panel somewhere on some television,
Why not?
Yes.
And Israel moderating it. Why not?
I know.
Thank you, wonderful.
Take these occasions so importantly. Thanks so much, madam. We take these occasions so importantly for us because of the global value that it adds into the Kenyan context. I don't have a question per se, but I have a couple of thoughts. Since morning we have been listening to the presentations, and I just want to thank AMWIK for the well-thought paper and the two academia people who have put this together. This is quite amazing, and I agree with everyone that we need to take this into the next level, and I'll suggest a few spaces where we can take this to the next level, other than the media, which I'm not an expert in. I'm just a data practitioner. The first thing that comes to my mind is that the invitation by the Israel, there was a presenter from Israel. I hope we never took it so lightly. It's so important. It's one of the countries that has done a lot on technology-facilitated abuse. And I think it's important to learn from that invitation itself. We need to take it so seriously, and including, and I know Phoebe has worked out, my colleague from the State Department for Gender. This is a voice that we need to listen and see some of the examples. We have visited Israel. It's well known for half homes and safe spaces, but I think now in technology-facilitated abuse and mitigations for that, I think there are quite a lot of lessons that we can learn from there. I like the interventions, and that also came from the floor, on particularly holding the high-tech companies, to put into place platform mechanisms that is going to help women and going to help girls, boys, and men to mitigate the technology-facilitated abuse. But figure out this, and I'm very happy Mheshimiwa from one of the county assemblies is here with us. In 2013, we were the same people that one of the conditions for the women to run into the political spaces, we did encourage them to open those accounts. It was a requirement. I personally worked with Gladys Wanga to be able to put, and she was one of the most followed, and we could rank them. If you remember those years, we could even produce the documentation of how well they are ranked. We worked with them to prepare the communication piece for them, but we never prepared for them for the consequences. And I think the whole intergenerational change is what we need to focus on. Ask ourselves, who introduced us to that X page? Who introduced you to that face X, to that face page? Did they ever told you about the consequences? Did they ever told you of the measures that you can put into place? I've seen now in CBC, they are learning a lot of those. You're going to find our children are really interacting, and they're required to post to school in the projects they have undertaken at home together with you. But we have cautioned the children that what we are doing with you can have its negative consequences, and I don't think we are doing that quite enough. So we have an opportunity to take this to the education space so that the younger generation or the younger persons can be well prepared more than we are. Of course, the technology-facilitated violence in Kenya took precedence after the COVID-19, when we were all at home and all this kind of thing. Did we ever anticipate that? We measured the impact of COVID-19, and I met Queen. I don't know whether she's still here,
Queen is
the UN Women. But most importantly is to start thinking of the cumulative impact of technology-facilitated violence in terms of dollars, in terms of Kenya shillings. We have the cost of economic burden of gender-based violence in Kenya, undertaken by the National Gender Equality Commission, UNFPA, and UN Women. But I don't think we have yet conceived this idea that we can start quantifying the impact that the technology-facilitated abuse has contributed to. And lastly is the first world countries, and let's speak to us on this, they have already started putting in mechanisms for controlling technology-facilitated violence. There are a couple of softwares and spywares that you can use. Is this an opportunity for Kenya to take it further? One is the SCNII, Stop Non-Consensual Intimate Image Circulation. It's one you can check on the software, and it's a lot of machine learning. It's new machine learning. It's a huge investment. Could this be one of the opportunities we need to start investing in? The other one is called Take It Down, which is another software that is commonly used, and it's a huge investment, but we must provide government with solutions and practicable, feasible, least invasive, cost-effective solutions. Things that we can implement and we can see results, because again, if we don't see the results, then people are likely to shy away from that. And then lastly, my contributions, and UNESCO, you are the chair for this, is on foresight thinking and future thinking. The whole smartphones may not be with us by 2030, or even nearer, or even earlier than that. Are we thinking, we need to start thinking of how this technology-facilitated violence is going to mutate itself. And the foresight thinking perhaps will help us give state agencies practical solutions, not that which work today, but which are going to work post-2030.
Post-2030. I love that. Let's talk